Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Bill Bragan. I'm the Executive Artistic Director of the Arts Center at NYU Abu Dhabi, and we are really thrilled to have one of the largest arts chats we've had with all of the artists here representing the bands who are here at the Barzakh Festival, which is an annual festival at the Arts Center that's really about celebrating artists from multiple traditions who are bringing in local musics and really kind of cutting across borders. We have created this series in partnership with NYU's Career Development Center, and one of the things that's important within that collaboration is that there are lots of opportunities for people to learn how to be great artists, but not always to think about what it means to have a career as an artist. And we have an incredibly diverse group of artists who have made really, really strong careers in lots of different parts of the world, in lots of different conditions. So tonight is an opportunity for us to really talk about how they structure their own business as musicians, and sort of especially the role of publishing and intellectual property within the total mix of how people earn a living. We are especially grateful to SASEM, who are sponsoring this chat as well as sponsoring the entire Barzakh Festival. I want to thank Habib Ashur in particular for opening up this conversation, which is such an important one to have right here in the UAE. So I am going to, since we have so many panelists, open up with a general question and ask everybody to introduce themselves as they answer the question. Feel free, if somebody says something that you want to respond to even in the moment, let's make this a conversation, and then we'll sort of open up the room a little bit further beyond that with all of you and the questions that are on your minds. So I guess the first question that we have is really about in a very quickly changing environment where the nature of the recorded music industry has really changed over the past 5 or 10 years as it's moved from physical product to streaming and online. The role of concerts has become important. The role of publishing has been more important. I'm curious for you to each talk about how do you make a living? How as an artist, what is the income that comes from each of these different areas? And because Michael League from Bokante has given me such a big smile, and because through Bokante, Snarky Puppy, and Freshen Up, he's so diversified, I'm going to let you in the middle with your smile, because I'll open the conversation, and then we'll open it up further.
The question was what percentage of my income comes from
how much money do you make? No, within all the different ways that you make a living as an artist, so what does that mix look like? How much of what you earn comes from being on the road, or from selling records, or from selling merch, or from sync rights and having your music used on a commercial or a film or so on?
Well, I think in general, I have a record label and 2 bands and a festival. And also a publishing company. So I've really, over the last 15 years, I've tried to kind of create many different revenue streams, and kind of within each of those streams, multiple streams, you know? And at any point in time, probably 70% of them are losing money, and 30% of them only are making money, you know? It's just the nature of, for me, of starting any kind of thing profitable immediately, so I kind of balance which ones are doing well. Right now, my band Snarky Puppy is doing very well, you know, but after 15 years of working very hard. My band Bokante, which is playing here, is not doing as well because it's new. It's 3 years old instead of 15. So, in a way, Snarky Puppy pays a lot of Bokante's bills, indirectly, you know what I mean? Because the money that I make personally from that band goes into this. So, you know, it's not maybe the most responsible way, of course, to run a company is siloing. If all of your streams are self-sufficient and profitable, then you don't have to take money from one to pay for another thing. But it's not realistic, especially now that we've lost this revenue stream. The reason why I was laughing is because I made more money 15 years ago selling, you know, 10 copies of our first record than I make streaming 1 million streams from our 13th record, you know. So because, except for you work for Sasha, is that right?
Yes.
Can I shake your hand, please? This is the only country in the world that pays us for streaming. It's crazy, really. My last check, I think it for publishing was something like 300 times larger from France than it was from the United States.
Wow. Okay.
You know, I mean, really, I think it was, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, a lot of, I don't want to, I'm rambling, there's a lot of people to talk, but to answer your question in the shortest way possible, I would say that it's spread out, but normally one thing, like for me right now, it's Snarky Puppy's live thing is the thing that's generating the income, and I'm investing that in the other streams so that one day, hopefully, they'll be profitable.
Great, and then we will, I think, talk later a little bit about why France is perhaps different than other territories. So now I'm going to go to an artist who's actually based in France, which is Dame Blanche, and ask you the same question. If you could talk a little bit about how you as a band organize those different streams.
All right. So Yaite and I we produce everything of La Dame Blanche by ourselves, tours and records. We have no label company. We have nothing that. Just we deal some licenses. Each time when we release a new album, we try to deal the new licenses. At the end, it's like we have 3 licenses for the whole world. Well, one is not a licensee, it's the territory that we look after by ourselves through iMusician, you know, simply like that, just digital for iMusician. It's Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe, and then we have a deal. I mean, is it okay? Is it what we were asking for? We have a deal in the US for many countries of America, and they got the national record. They have England and Spain too. Actually, we are trying now to get those territories back because they didn't do good on those in Europe, and so we have neither any publishing deal, but we look after that through a company that called iDeal, and I think you know them, because the guy was a head guy in the SACEM before. So with that company, we managed to get back all the publishing rights. Talking about the concerts, so to tell you, we do like mostly between 80 and 100 shows a year in 30 countries, 20 to 30 countries. So it's a lot of concerts and it's a lot of publishing rights through the live show. And with them we managed to get everything back. We did an audit. How do you say audit?
Oh, yeah.
Audit. We did an audit. They did an audit at the SACEM, and then after 2 years we get very good money. I mean, this money was lost. I think for independent musician is very interesting. It's a point. We have to go and get our money where it is, you know. And then no, that's how we do. Mostly our incomes are from the concerts, and then I can tell 75% of our income is from the concerts. And then streaming is crap.
Yeah.
It's really nothing. We have synchro. We have sync. It's good. It's good to have a Netflix synchro or some stuff like this.
So I'm assuming that when he says a sync, does everybody here know what he means when he says we have syncs? Okay, so if you can just explain very simply what you mean by a sync.
Netflix gives you some money to use your song 15 seconds on the trailer. Not even on the series in itself, but just the trailer is very good. It's very good money, you know, you just get it, and that's it. The thing is that more we tour, more streaming and synchro we have, you know what I mean? The ratio is getting better with the years. For those little things like streaming and synchro, and you know, when we start, our income were the concert. Like 98% of the income were from the concert, and now we are 75%, more or less.
And for you to put out a recording, is that a money maker or is that a loss leader that you do to then generate money from
the
other?
thing is that the music we do is not very expensive to produce, as we do it by ourselves. I record, I mix. I used to master. Now I ask a friend, a good master engineer, to do it because I don't want to do it. I prefer to feel free and to yes. But what I wanted to tell is that I've lost my idea. I had something very interesting to say.
We'll come back to your very interesting thing. But let's move on to another territory, very different territory, which is South Africa. Although BCUC has also made had huge waves all throughout Europe and all throughout the world. So I'm curious, both sort of what it looks like within the home territory, and then also I think many people here are thinking about what it means then to take your group internationally, and how that shifts as you start to open up your and what you define as your marketplace.
It's interesting because for us, we make almost all of our money from shows. All of our money we make it from shows, and we are under SASEM now. So for the first time we got money, like you wake up, there's money. So it's still new to us, and we are from a territory where it is known that you will never get money for royalties or publishing or anything, it's a norm, like we don't get that money, we don't chase it, So all of our money comes from the shows, but then we're doing good with merch, because after every show, plus minus 30 CDs and vinyls that we sell. It's an ordinary day, and then on a good day, plus minus 100 CDs or vinyls. So it makes a lot of money on the road. It makes decent money. Let me say decent money on the road. So yeah, I think that is how we are in South Africa. All of our money we make it with shows. We make it with shows. And how do we do that? We do not have one person that we work with or under a contract with anyone. Everyone that we work with them from trust and from, I think we like you, we can work with you, So I think we are working a bit odd, because everyone is talking about, hey, you've got to protect. We don't have anything to protect. We just work like this. We are output, And our reason is because we love what we do, and our music is more about social commentary, So it is important for us what we do on stage than what happens after stage and who goes and get the money where.
And within the South African market, are you licensing your tracks for commercials and films? Is that not part of sort of the band's identity and mission, or is the marketplace not there? And is it an area that you are looking at, or really you're still focusing on direct communication and a live setting?
I think it's because we are selective. And also there's not a lot of people that we admire as doing a good job. In South Africa it is a trend to be big for 2 years and disappear, and there is that washing machine that is happening, and we are trying to choose not to be part of that, you know. So that makes it not a very good market in terms of money, South Africa, for us. And we are signed in France anyway, like European rates are way better than South African rates, and we're always on the road. So in South Africa, we play because it is important for us to play, you know, but somehow maybe we're a wrong band to talk about money because we don't make a lot of money, you know, but we make a lot of music, we make a lot of shows, and we think in time it's gonna make a lot of money, you know. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to skip over our kind of our locally based artists for a minute, come back to Dubai, and go. You're working. This is Sofiane AMMAR 808, who's working based in Belgium, from Tunisia, working internationally as well. Can you talk a little bit about how it's working in your situation, and also, do you have different strategies for the European market and for the market as well?
Yeah. So I think. The kind of angle I do things from is the angle from being producer. So I define myself also as an artist, like working for my own projects, but also I have the possibility to work and collaborate on other people's projects. So it gives me quite a margin of maneuver to experiment things and also do more work during the year. So yeah, so like, if I come back to the income question, I would say it's spread out between live shows, production for other people, like for bands or for... And then you have the sync and the publishing part, and all that is like, the more you produce tracks and the more there's chances and income that comes from streaming, sync, etc. What the others talked about. So the thing is that it gives me quite a different speed of trying out things. For instance, when you accompany a band, you produce them, you play with them, and you do a couple of bands in a couple of years. You can try out all sort of things. You live extremely diverse situations, and your learning curve is much faster. So you get to a place where, let's say, the income is not really the main issue here, but it's more how you manage your time to get to a balanced income that you actually can dedicate yourself into new experiences. And so finding this margin, it's actually a small margin. I mean, like, I'm neither rich or poor, it's just enough. But there is always like this small margin that you can actually try new things. And try new things, meaning that you have absolutely no guarantee on a commercial success. And because it's not the point, I guess. So, I mean, we wouldn't have this conversation if it's just about money, because otherwise we would just playing weddings, you know. You would make much more money playing in weddings. You know? So it's about finding I think the whole conversation here today is about finding this balance between what to do and how to do it, but being financially viable. I live in Belgium. I grew up in Tunisia, so I went from a totally different scene to another one, so I had to kind of start from scratch. Also on the level of subsidy, like in Belgium you have certain subsidies to kind of help artists with transportation, with the production of the albums, etc. And this is like an infrastructure that can help you start something. Sometimes you find them in some places and sometimes not. I'm happy this year because, like, every project I did didn't need subsidies, and it's like totally viable. And built with a very small team that works together, and you get things done. And we had a good year.
So let's go to Sofiane Saidi, and we've got Julien here, I guess, who's going to help kind of include the conversation. How has it been working for you? The career is really taking off a lot in Europe. How is the combination of shows versus recordings versus syncs, licensing?
Il est en train de se développer pas mal en Europe en ce moment. Quel est l'équilibre entre la partie concert, la partie enregistrement, la partie disque?
Synchro.
Ouais.
Et ça le synchro.
Ouais. Bah, en fait, clairement, c'est les concerts qui nous font vivre. Une partie, je dirais 70%.
The biggest part of the income is from the shows.
Mais après la part des droits, quand elle arrive, on est vraiment très content aussi, quoi.
But when the author's rights are arriving, we are very happy too, but most of the part of the rights we have with this project, I'm also the publisher, so I continue the most part of the rights comes from the EP, from the rights of the concert. We have also the rights from the CD we sell and the vinyl we sell, and we had also one synchro for a Danish series who give us a little bit of rights to radio stations. So most of the radio play our music is small radio, not national radio, so it's not a big income, but it's also something.
It's noticeable. I mean, when you have a song in the record that goes on the radio, it's very noticeable on the Sassen sheet.
Yeah.
You can see it, all the song that goes on the radio, it's not the same number at the end, It's really noticeable still.
Et ce qui est intéressant aussi, c'est que plus on joue, plus on fait des concerts, plus on a aussi des droits de représentation de ça. Je ne sais pas si c'est partout pareil. En tout cas, nous,
it's the same in the Rome Convention.
Ouais.
But not all over when we play, when we do concert, we have income rights from exploitation rights. DEP, and it's nice because it's a good way to have an income and also to distribute the music.
Great. So the UAE is a much newer market in terms of a lot of these structures. Ratish from Noon has been really kind of a pioneer on the independent scene and has really been doing a lot of work within the context of the UAE. How have you been doing it as Noon's been growing?
So I think the commonality between all of this is the fact that live shows generate most of the income. I'm not too sure that most revenue, or like most artists over here, gain any form of revenue through live streaming. At least this is speaking specifically for the UAE, because it's much harder to get your music out there from a place that's still so new. Like the country itself is under 50 years. So as a new artist doing music that isn't too common over here, it's harder to even push that out there. So for the most part, like AMMAR,
Yeah.
so as AMMAR was saying as well, finding a healthy balance in terms of live shows and exploring new opportunities, I think is the biggest revenue stream for us as musicians, not only as Noon, but as musicians all over the country, it's definitely not as easy to push your music out there through all the social media outlets, because UAE is still a growing market, it's a growing place, and everything is quite new. But that being said, places like New York University and other outlets are now finally giving different artists platforms to do that and to push music. So there's definitely hope, but at the same time, for the most part, it's all live shows that give you your main revenue stream over here.
Can I throw something out? I think it's important that obviously we've recognized that live shows are where the majority of us are getting the majority of our money, but I think it's important to recognize that it's not realistic to think that you can play live shows your whole life.
Yeah.
Physically, You know, I'm 35 and I have the back of an 85-year-old man. You know what I mean?
I literally threw my back out the other day.
And really, I mean, if we talk about, if I say who has back prop among touring, you know, it sounds it is funny actually, but it's not funny because, you know, there's a comedian he was doing a joke. He said I didn't realize until I hurt my back that you need your back for everything. You know, absolutely everything. And not just your back, but think about your family or, you know, other health things, and like to use live performance as your sole breadwinner for the rest of your life is irresponsible, I think.
You think so?
I think it is.
I just can't imagine another thing.
I know, and that's why.
I just don't want to stop. Never. I want
Right,
to
right.
die on stage.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think you're right, because as musicians, we want to, right? And we will, and hopefully we'll, you know, be like Oscar Peterson and play. But sometimes an illness happens, or you know, or all of a sudden your family, you know, we have a member of our band who had a very complicated situation with childbirth, you know, and he had to stay home, you know, for years. So I think
the backup plan is imminent.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, I don't want to waste everybody's time because the battle is over, or the war of streaming is over, and musicians had a very, very clear, long window to oppose the way in which streaming funding was being set up, and we did not. Because we're musicians and we're thinking about chord progressions. You know what I mean? Instead of saying, there was a clear, I remember distinctly, it was about 2 years where the musician community could have stood up and said, this is total crap. Like the way that this plan of paying us out is not, it hasn't been set up well enough yet. And the whole, oh, well, when we reach 300 million listeners, then we can start paying you well. It's not acceptable, you know? And had every country set up their streaming system the way that is it, how do you say it, SACEM, and France had set it up, we might have a viable living from streaming, but all of a sudden, you know, we've lost the revenue stream of the album sales. It's gone. You know what I mean? And now we're trying to substitute it with touring, which means we have to tour more, spend less time with our families, injure our bodies more, put more pressure on promoters to pay us more, which makes them go out of business when we don't sell enough tickets. And it's unnecessary pressure that's being moved from one thing to another thing. So while we're talking about live, that's where all the money is, it is, but I think we all as individual musicians have to think about where else can we make our money, because something can happen in your life and that thing can disappear, and if that's the only thing that's feeding your family and your career, you're in trouble.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you actually jumped in, because that is kind of a perfect segue to...
No, I want to play forever.
To the conversation that I wanted to open up, because it's a physical aspects and how long that can be sustained, but it's also scarcity, right? There are 365 days in a year, you know, and you need to get from one place to another and another. I think there are more and more artists who are also thinking about what is the carbon footprint of touring? What does it mean to make a living by physically going from place to place? And how do you contribute to global warming that way? And there's also the question of what channels might there be for passive income that don't require your personal presence all the time in all the different places. And those are channels, I think, a lot of them we've been sort of bandying a lot of different terms around about sync rights and publishing and licensing and royalties and all of that, that all sort of roll up into the larger question of intellectual property and that idea of intellectual property as something that belongs to the creator. So I wanted Habib from SACEM to talk a little bit about sort of those broader concepts, and then how some of those concepts come into play from a practical standpoint through the different kind of roles that an organization like SACEM plays.
Yeah, just as a start, just to say a few words to introduce myself maybe. I used to be an artist manager and a booking agent. So I've been working with all of you for 25 years before coming to SACEM and trying to bring this experience to the collection of rights that is the main mission of SACEM. The main mission of what we call collective management organizations, that's the official name. We collect the rights and we distribute the rights to our members. So we are a non-profit organization. We belong to our members. It's important to understand that we belong to the creators being the composers and authors of music, lyricists, and the publishers of music. So all of them together, almost 200,000 people, are members of SACEM, and it has nothing to do with being French or being in France. SACEM is an international society based in France, but it's open to anyone. There's a tradition that started in the 19th century about collecting the rights in France. That's maybe why you feel the difference about it. There's a legal framework that has nothing to do with France today, as we are in the UE and we are in the European Union. So the legal framework is European today. So it's the same, supposed to be the same for everybody, but it's not implemented the same way. But it started in the 19th century with artists protesting about the use and abuse of their works. And this is how it started in a cafe in Paris, and some musicians decided that it was enough that this bartender made so much money and that they didn't have anything for them in their pocket. So they decided to create this society that is now 160 years old.
That's cool.
So we have we are a big society. We are the world leader in collecting rights. We are 1,500 people work for SACEM and collect $1.7 billion a year. So this is a big money. This is a big company, and I work for Africa and the Middle East, where we have 20,000 members. That's huge. So we are the most important collecting management organization in this part of the world. Where most of the time intellectual property laws are not respected, or where they exist, they are not implemented in the real life of a musician. And so this is why you can't feel the color of these rights, because it is not collected, and if it is collected, usually it's not distributed in some country that some of us know around this assembly. So what we do today, our size gave us the opportunity to develop technological tools that are almost unique in the world to track the web and check all uses online of your works. So this is why we can collect relatively more than other societies the works online. We have licenses with all major streaming platforms. So the major ones being Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer Music. In the Arab world there is also AMMAR that is very important for Arab musicians. Yeah. And this is also very important for all international musicians who want their music to be broadcast in this region of the world. And there is of course the leader of the streaming, that is YouTube. So we also have a deal with YouTube, so we have deals and licenses with all of these platforms, and we collect this money for our members and also for our mandates that are the biggest publishers in the world, like Universal Music Publishing and Warner Music Publishing, who trust us and ask us to collect online their rights. So this is why we have a power to collect more and to have better conditions on the licensing deals we have with these platforms.
Do you collect title also?
Do we collect what?
Title.
Title. Yes, sure.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Title is, yeah, it's a small market share, and it's a fragile company today, but it exists, and we have a deal with them. What else to say? Our role is, of course, to protect musicians. That is our second mission, and to protect their works, to protect the composers, and to make them work in a better environment, and where, as you said, they don't have to rely only on the concert fees, because they will not spend their life touring, and there are years where you have to sit back and just think about your future project. And you cannot be on the road 100% of the time. Even if around this table you have musicians who are already heavy tourer, that I admire, but that has pauses or an end. It cannot last forever. So the third mission we have is also to create awareness about intellectual property among authorities of the countries where intellectual property is not respected. So I travel a lot to meet the ministries of culture or the decider of the cultural policies of the country to tell them the situation that is the following. If you don't respect intellectual property, you don't allow a vibrant artistic life in your country, and you cannot pretend on one side to be an attractive country like this one here today, and to attract people from all over the world, and to say that culture and music and entertainment is so important if you don't pay the content. And the content, this is what we protect, and the content is what you create.
Yeah.
So this content we protect it all around the world, and especially in the places where it is not naturally protected because there is no legal framework. Or like here, there is a legal framework, but the law is not implemented.
Yeah.
And some major interests, financial interests, tend to explain that authors' rights are a kind of supplementary tax. So this is not what they want. They don't want more taxes here or in the GCC more globally. So this is what we fight for. We explain that this is your remuneration, this is your money, and these are your rights. It's not about taxing people, it's just about paying the people who create the content. And in many fields it sounds obvious, but not in the music business. So this is a bit strange. And the explanation is very simple. It's because music, from the beginning of the digital era, is so easy to compress and to download.
Yep.
So you don't even have the feeling that you're stealing anything when you download a track and you do it for free. So when it started, as you were saying, there was in the 2000 years, 2 years period where people could have gathered together and start fighting for their rights, but everybody was fighting alone. And in most countries, and this is why France is a bit exceptional on that side, because there are a lot of guilds, syndicates, and unions where musicians get together and fight together. This is not the case in most of the countries in the world. So if you don't do it together, you're not a strength towards the authorities. You can't fight for these rights. So we are trying to help musicians to get their rights in proving to the leaders of the countries, like Algeria, for instance, where you come from, that this money cannot be used just when it is collected, because Algeria is a country that is, after South Africa, the most important country in Africa for collecting the rights. But these rights are not fairly distributed, so that creates a feeling of injustice. This has to be corrected, and this is why we are trying to help the people who collect that money to give tools and to have partnerships to create a better balance and to help all of you get their rights anywhere in the world, because this is the spirit of the convention, the International Convention that rule intellectual property in the world, and it's the Berne Convention, and it's dated 1887. So it's a very old principle.
Now, when we were talking earlier, you made reference to a creation fund, and so
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you, in a way, it's similar to kind of when Michael started the conversation about how certain parts of your activities then get reinvested to support other parts of your activities, and that you're sort of cross-collateralizing everything that you do to come up with your kind of your mix. Can you talk a little bit about sort of that role of the kind of reinvestment of creation fund and
Yes,
how
for sure.
this intellectual property fund plays into creation of more art? Yeah.
Of course, as one of you said, music is not always viable. You can have musical project, and you can live with one project and spend what you earn with Snarky Puppy on another project. And it's same for you. You can invest the money you made. But the structures of a country where music is important, or entertainment more globally is important, understand that position. So it's understood that some projects need help. So some help can come from foundations, and there are sponsors or mecenes who can help these projects. But also the main fund that is available is the fund that collective management organization collect, and this is the share that is dedicated to helping the project of all the members of this collective management organization. So first, of course, the creators must be members of a collective management organization. And it is a first step that most Arab musicians don't do. Most Arab musicians are not members of a collective management organization. And then and once member, they can benefit from these helps. It can help them produce an album or go on tour or have an international career. And mostly it's made for developing the careers of young musicians who play a kind of music that is not huge on the radios or online. That's the goal of these funds.
Right. So I'm curious, how many people who are here are artists, musicians, songwriters? All right, so we've got a lot of artists in the room. I'm going to get on a tiny soapbox for a minute, and then I'm going to get off, and I'm going to open up the conversation. One thing that I noticed when I moved to the UAE about 5 years ago is that there are a lot of really great musicians everywhere you go, and they're mostly playing cover songs. One of the things that we've been hearing kind of throughout is that the drivers for a viable career are either doing concerts and touring, and so cover bands, wedding bands was brought up, is a big part of it, but the other part is the role of playing original music. So my little one moment of soapbox is to think about, as you're developing as an artist, what role original music and original songwriting plays in how you're kind of building your own role as an artist. I know for us at Rooftop Rhythms, which had historically been purely a spoken word event, we started opening up to songwriters with the one rule being it has to be original music, because we wanted to help support people generating their own creativity and showcasing their own creativity so that we can continue to develop the UAE into a more viable global market. So that's my one little, I'm going to be a panelist for a second, and I'm going to use that as a segue to open up now a conversation. We've got an incredibly experienced panel of working artists and professionals. We've got an incredibly full room of other artists and professionals and people striving. So what's on your mind? What questions do you have? And panelists, what questions might you have for one another as well?
Actually, I want to know if you have worked with any artists in the GCC with your company as of now.
Yes, but most of them have left the GCC. Exactly. And they settled in London, in New York, or in Paris.
Because the rights are so haphazard over here for the most part.
Yeah,
because it's hard to be familiarized with the idea of intellectual property and copyright over here when there isn't as much access to that information.
There's no access and there's no respect.
Absolutely.
So this is our fight for more respect of intellectual properties of artists in this country.
I think
and we haven't been heard and understood until now, but it's been 5 years now that we are talking. The situation is changing, that's a paradox for me, more rapidly in Saudi Arabia than here.
Right.
Where they really want now to build a collective management organization.
Yeah.
And they asked us to help us and to support them on how to do it and how it should work. And we are not even at this stage here in the UAE, where music is much more used in clubs, restaurants, concerts, and cultural centers.
I never thought I would be able to play a show in Saudi Arabia, but we recently actually got to do that. And it was absolutely incredible. It was a huge production. Yeah,
and they want to structure their music industry, so they need an organization that will be the main structure of this industry. So this is something that all musicians have to fight for here.
Absolutely.
You have to tell the situation to the leaders of this country, and you have to explain them that if they don't want all their artists to flee the country and to go to Europe or North America, that they need to organize and structure something that will protect the artists.
Right. Yeah.
Right, so my question is going to be to all the artists. Generally, it was specific to Noon.
Wait, come a little closer because the mic is facing this way, so let's at least hear you if we don't even get to see you.
Right. Hi, my question is going to be for everyone, but in specific to the band Noon. How do you guys approach when huge festivals approach you for an opening act? How do you deal with that if you want some compensation at least, rather than just the opportunity?
Well, for the most part, we try and get whatever opportunity is available. The compensation obviously has to be fixed, and you can't sort of you can't let yourself be played like for So you can't necessarily sell yourself short, is what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, certain opportunities don't compensate you as much, but the musical value and the actual experience trumps that. So we have also found ourselves doing that, but for the most part, it has to be a healthy balance between the two. Yeah.
So this question you're sort of asking about exposure gigs, right?
Yeah, because like my band got asked to play a festival, to open for a festival last year. As a small band, this is a huge opportunity for us, but then again, because we're still small, we can't ask for more than just that exposure.
Yeah, well,
I wouldn't say it's an opportunity. I think if you see it as an opportunity, that's already a distraction.
Yeah.
I think you should see it as more an experience, to experience a big stage.
Yeah.
More something like to kind of have the experience of being in this setup. But seeing it as an opportunity, I don't think so. Because in most festivals, I mean, at least for myself, when I go to a festival, I see a band playing, I like the music, I don't know who they are. You're just there and you're having a drink and you're going around and you know, like most of the people, maybe a big number of them are not well informed who's doing what and you know. I also played in festivals where you play in a very bad slot and basically everybody's still sleeping, waking up, you know. So, and it's too hot, and you know, and it can be an experience that if you take it as an opportunity, you will have a little bit of you can be like have some sort of deception, and so it gets the energy of the whole band down. It's like this was a bad experience, and you kind of think that it's gonna be always like this. No. So, if you see it as an experience, that you kind of roll up the thing and play and you know, why not? But it's not an opportunity.
Does anybody else want to respond to that, or should we go back to?
Also, like the idea of playing solely for exposure is something that's thrown at musicians quite a lot. So, like you said, if the experience is what matters to you, then you should definitely go for it. But if it's just another festival where you don't necessarily are familiarized with the other artists that are playing, or maybe it's not an opportunity for you to connect with also musicians and artists at the same festival that you love, then there should be a reconsideration process to a certain extent. But again, I don't think anyone should sell themselves short because, you know, talent is a real thing, music is a real thing. And
should get paid both ways anyway.
Yeah.
May I add something? I think some concerts are an investment. Personal and band investment.
Yeah,
These concerts, you can't miss them because you're not paid. If you have to pay to play a concert, you can Global Fest. That would be a huge investment because you'd have to go to New York. You'd have to find the money to go there, and you'd have to find the energy, and you have to think about it as a strategy. And if you do it, you have to know why you're doing it, and what strategy, who you will meet once you play. Did you invite the right people, publishers, agents, managers, etc. If you go and play Womex where you have played, Womex is the same. Womex, it's a cost. So you need to know that. You can't complain that you have no fee. It's even worse.
Yeah.
It's a cost. So if you think that this concert is valuable, if you need it to develop your career, it's your strategy, your own strategy maybe, not to play Global Fest, but Womex. And then you would choose to spend maybe $5,000 for Womex. And that would be clever. More clever than saying, no, I don't play there because I'm not paid.
So, Sofiane Saidi, in the past 2 years, has played both Global Fest and Womex.
Atlantic Music Expo.
Thanks to you.
And so a number of these showcase festivals that are designed, they're open to the public, but they're also designed as industry showcases. So, so if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Alors, je voulais dire un truc, je vais traduire en même temps. Ouais, en fait, il y a un truc qui, pour un musicien, je pense, son meilleur ampli, si on peut dire comme ça, son ampli, c'est son instinct.
For a musician, the best amplificator
Ouais.
inside is instinct.
Ouais. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a des fois, tu sais que
Sometimes you know you should do
là, il faut aller, même si des fois financièrement c'est pas terrible. Et je rejoins ce qu'il disait tout à l'heure, que au bout d'un moment on est fatigué de faire que des concerts c'est ça. On est fatigué un peu avec l'âge et tout, mais en même temps c'est notre métier. On sera encore plus fatigué si on arrête de faire ce métier.
And as a man, sometimes you can feel tired or something like that, but to be on stage is your work, is your job. So you need to follow your instinct to use your energy in the best place you can do.
Donc il y a des fois on va à un endroit, on sait que cet endroit-là, on peut faire une très bonne rencontre, on peut faire une sacrée rencontre même qui peut changer sa propre vie, quoi. Qui peut changer le projet et sa vie, quoi.
Sometimes you follow your instinct to go on a stage or a festival or I don't know, how do you say tremplin?
Like a platform to get exposed to.
Yeah, a professional platform or this kind of thing, and you know you should go there, and you go there, you spend money, you spend energy, you take
الإحساس تحس
Sí, ¿no?
بالحاجة تحس بها
Permiso. Y también te quería decir que eso te pasa a ti que estás empezando ahora, pero nos pasa a nosotros también, que hace tiempo que estamos en la carretera. ¿Puedes traducir?
Yeah. So she's saying that happens to you, that you're starting right now, but it happens also to them who have been on the road.
Every day.
Still.
Every day.
Et récemment justement, on a été aux États-Unis, au Urban Fest, et ça a été. Enfin, on pense que c'est un nouveau. Enfin, moi, je suis en train de penser que c'est un nouveau tournant, non seulement pour le Boussirab Théaï, non seulement pour ma musique, mais aussi pour le projet, et peut-être aussi une porte, peut-être une porte pour d'autres personnes derrière nous. Parce que la musique, ça, on apprend par des gens et on transmet à des gens. Et ça, c'est aussi important, cette activité-là, quoi.
Recently we went to Global Fest in New York, in USA, and we had also 3 concerts around in Washington DC, and it's a way to open a door for new territory for us, but also for the music we represent when we do it, and for other artists after.
And just to frame Global Fest, I co-founded a World Music Showcase Festival about 17 years ago. We just had our 17th edition, and for the first about 10, 12 years, there was no fee at all for artists. It was totally self-funded as a showcase. I've been doing it as a volunteer for 17 years. It's been very important ethically that I'm not making any money. I'm doing it because it's about kind of growing the market and the community. We then eventually got some foundation support and put in a sort of per musician honorarium, which is still a fraction of actually the cost that it takes for a group to be here. But 3 of the 6 groups that are playing at the Barzakh Festival are groups that have been at Global Fest. I even use it for myself. There are also 2 are at Womex as well, which is where I go to see artists. So it's important for me as an organizer when putting a platform like that out to know that the right people are going to be in the audience, that we will have legitimate artistic directors and festival bookers who are going to be there so that the opportunity can turn into resources and can turn into gigs and can turn into kind of actual touring, that we're not taking advantage of the artists, but we are working sort of in people's favor. But it's that as an issue, and that sort of the ethics of what it means to invest in that has been a big part of kind of what we've done to ensure that the platform and that the investment that the artists make can turn into a return. Now I know you had a question. Yes.
Well, yes, and well, maybe a comment. I'm actually surprised to hear that we are encouraging musicians to play for free. I understand there are limited times and industry events where you might do that, but where I'm from the Netherlands, we as much as also as fellow musicians, we try to stand up against the low income on streaming. I think we should also tell each other not to play for free or for very low fees, because we're destroying our own market by doing that, and you see that how the fees have gone down. So I think for some events that might be a good idea, and industry events particularly. But to play and obviously a lot of bands play at a local club or a wedding or things like that. You know, you don't pay rent with exposure. you need to get a fee. And I think we really need to stand up and not have people play for free too much.
Please.
I think no one here would play for free
Yeah,
without knowing why to play for free.
That's not the general.
You speak about the Netherlands, where there is the
consensus over here.
biggest rock event in the beginning of the year. I'm speaking about Eurosonic.
Yes.
Eurosonic, no band is paid to play Eurosonic.
I know.
And many managers and producers and publishers of music, or even artists themselves, pay to go there.
But those
and
are
play.
very unique events, huh?
Yes, and that is what we are talking about.
Yeah.
We're not at all
Just to
talking
be
about
sure,
weddings
everyone.
where you should ask 10 times what you ask to play here.
Yes, but when you go to meet them, you don't get paid. When you go to global,
Yes.
This is special events
Yeah.
that permit us to meet everybody at the same time, all the musicians and all the actors of the
And this must be
industry.
part of the strategy that the manager
Because
decides.
I won't
with
tell you how many money we made from things like Global Festival or other.
Because it connects to so many
because
other
it connects-
things.
You make your whole year after
Yeah.
that.
So that
Or
goes
a
exactly
lot
back
of
to what you were
content.
saying. Like, don't sell yourself short at any point in time, ever.
But then there is the other dimension of